Thank you. And of course, the talk today is going to focus on, it's more to help you, maybe using my book as a tool, to bring about a recall of abortion. You know, I've been, as you know, with the testimonies of the women for many years, working with the Silent No More Witness campaign. And over that time, many people would say, Janet, you should write a book. Janet, write a book of testimonies. And Sherry and Lamp can tell you that there are a lot of books out there that have collections of testimonies. And plus I felt they're on our website, silentnomore.com. You can read the testimonies, we have videos. I have to think about a purpose. These testimonies have to have a purpose. What are they going to do? And about 1.5 years ago, I was at a meeting with Father Pavone, and suddenly it was like, it really was the Holy Spirit, because I'm nothing special, trust me. I mean, even being on TV. I mean, the class I hated most in college was speech class, so it's not my forte. Never was. So I got this concept of, wait, one thing in common all the women have is they recall their abortion, even once they've gone through healing. They recall the fact, whether they destroyed 1, 2, whatever the number is, children. They've gone through healing, they've named those children. They can remember the dates that they were scheduled to have, that they had that abortion. They can also remember the date that that child would have been born. And so therefore, it's a constant recall. It's part of their memory, so to speak. But then I thought of the concept of abortion is hurting women. We know that, physically, psychologically. And if any product in your country or my country damaged people like abortion does, wouldn't they take it off the market? Wouldn't it be recalled? And so, you know, in the States, we have that concept where, you know, like things have been recalled. So I said, you know what, that's it. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna write a book with a purpose to make people realize that there is never a case, and that's what I started out with, the basis of, there is never a case where abortion is good for women. So what I do in the book, I start out by just showing how crazy we've gotten as societies, both in the States and here and just worldwide, when it comes to thinking about the unborn. And the first example I'm going to show you is, it goes back to my public school teaching. One of my colleagues, of course, you know, I taught in New York City, so they're all they call themselves pro-choice, and I was like the token pro-lifer, basically. My team teacher on first grade was this woman named Denise, and we were going to hatch chicks. And we got everything all set up, and we were so excited, you know, we're going to have our little fertilized eggs there in the incubator in the classroom. And the kids were all excited. And one morning, Denise and I came in, and we looked, and one of the shells was starting to crack. And inside, you could see the yolk sac and the little heart pulsing of this little chick that obviously was not going to be formed correctly or come to like a full chick. And we looked down and I said, oh my goodness, the little chick is still alive. And Denise, who was so pro-choice, said, oh my goodness, look at this little chick. What are we gonna do? It's still alive. And well, so what happened, unfortunately, within a few moments, the heart stopped. And of course, the little chick died. But then I said to her, it's amazing, you saw that that was something alive. And yet, if that was an unborn child, you're supporting the same thing being destroyed in the mother's womb. And so that's one of the examples I put in my book, because it seems to be, when it comes to nature and animals, suddenly we're more pro-life, aren't we? Everybody's pro-life, you know? Another example I used in my book is dogs, okay? Everybody here love dog lovers here? Okay. I have 2 little Shih Tzus, I just love them to pieces. But let's take an example. Suppose I had a beautiful, Labrador Retriever, and my Labrador Retriever is going to have 6 puppies. Well, of course, what's going to happen? Well, those 6 puppies are born. After they're weaned, I'm going to make a decent price on selling those pups, right? Now, my other friend over here, he's got a mutt, and she's pregnant with 6 pups. Now, is she going to have an easy time getting rid of those mutts? No, right? Hard time finding homes. Well, to use the pro-choice, pro-abortion mentality, why don't we just abort those 6 mutts, after all? Don't we have enough stray dogs roaming around New Zealand, right? I mean, this is a mentality. If you dared to abort those 6 mutts, right, there'd be an outcry, wouldn't they? People would be going crazy. But yet, with children, it's okay. We can destroy our children. So this is the kind of like logic I use in the beginning of the book to kind of show people that, with animals, we're pro-life. But with children now, it's okay. They're disposable, right? Disposable. So what I did with this book is, I took some of these logical, arguments and said, why can't we just look at what abortion is really doing? So first with the unborn child, I used those kind of examples. And then, of course, I went on to talk about why should we recall abortion? Why should we get it off the shelves altogether? Of course, in the States, I used some examples. We had cars recalled. We've had Vioxx recalled, different pills. And another example I use is because people might say, well, Janet, abortion is a medical procedure. Do we really recall medical procedures? And I said, yes, we have. I'm sure in New Zealand, in the psychiatric, associations here, years ago, they did lobotomies to treat mental illness, right? Did they do that here in New Zealand? I'm sure they did in the States. Cruel, cruel procedure. You can read about it, look it up. It's horrible what they did to people, literally destroying part of their brain. Well, of course, psychiatric medicine became more advanced. They discovered all kinds of medicines and therapies to treat mental illness. And so what happened? The Psychiatric Association said, we're banning, basically, lobotomies. It's no longer an acceptable practice. So again, using these examples, I say, why can't we do the same thing with abortion? We can prove that it's damaging women. We can prove that it's hurting fathers, hurting siblings, parents, everybody in society. So why can't we call this off the market? So from that, of course, here's a little bit more about I just showed you some more slides about the products that we've taken off the market. But the next thing I challenge everybody is abortion health care? Think about it. It's not. Abortion does not cure something the body can't do, right? It's actually stopping. Pregnancy and childbirth is a natural thing for the body to be doing. What does abortion do? It stops the body from doing something it was doing perfectly fine, right? So this is the kind of mindset we have to say. It's not even medicine. And in my book, I quote Dr. Philip Ney. He's a Canadian psychiatrist. He's actually been studying abortion for over 3 decades. And, he went through medical school and he said, abortion is not medicine. And that's really the mindset that I think you should get into more when we talk about that. And so I attacked it in the book of showing why it isn't medicine. And what I did was I held it up against any surgical procedure that you go in, okay, that day, right? Your doctor tells you, like, for instance, I have bad knees. I have a torn meniscus, need surgery. Well, I go to see the orthopedic surgeon, right? He sends me for tests, he diagnoses, tells me we'll have surgery maybe 3 weeks from now. I go into the hospital. I have to go there a few days before surgery. What do I have to have? Pre-admission testing. You do that here in New Zealand too, I'm sure, right? They have to do a chest x-ray, urine analysis, right? You meet with the anesthesiologist who tells you what kind of anesthesia you're gonna have. All these things happen. And now look at against abortion. And looking at the testimonies of the women who've gone to these clinics, does that happen? Absolutely not. When do they see the abortionists? When they're on the table. That's the first time they meet the doctor. When they're on the table with their legs in the stirrups, spread, ready to have that abortion. And do they see that doctor after the procedure? No. Go back to ambulatory surgery. You go to the hospital that day, you meet with your doctor before the surgery. After the surgery, he comes and tells you how it went. And then, before you leave the hospital later that day, you must have a family member take you home, or a friend, somebody. They won't let you drive. And they have you leave with usually 2 prescriptions, one for antibiotics and one for something for pain, right? And a follow-up appointment, right? To go back to see the doctor maybe a week or 2 later, right? Follow-up. Does that happen in abortion? No. The woman sees the doctor for the first time on the table. She never sees him again unless she comes back to that same clinic for a repeat abortion. And you heard from Lan's testimony, and we have so many on the Sound No More site. The conditions that these women had to endure. I mean, they come into the clinic and they're basically told cash, insurance, or credit card up front. They don't take a medical history. You know, my own daughter, and it's in the book, had 2 abortions. She didn't tell me when she was away at college. And she's a diabetic. And she nearly died. She was states away from me. She was in Michigan when she had the abortion. I was in New York. I had no idea she was pregnant. And she's a type 1 diabetic. And they had no idea, and she nearly died. So imagine, this is what happens to women in abortion clinic. There's no health history, so they don't know what maybe this is a diabetic. A diabetic undergoing any kind of surgery, there's all kinds of other protocols that you should have to do. But again, in abortion, they don't follow any of that. The first time, what happens basically to the women in the clinic is they come in, they pay, they're taken to another room, they're told to undress. If they're lucky, they're given a pill, a little sedative to calm them down, but I can introduce you to women that were given absolutely no sedatives, nothing. They performed the first trimester abortion on them with no painkillers, nothing. And it's horrible procedure, horrible. And so this is the way I approach this in the book, and there's a lot of testimonies in there to read of the women who will tell you about what this abortion, what it was like that day in the abortion clinic. I mean, there was one testimony where the abortionist told the woman, you know, she was closing her legs, I don't want to do this, I've changed my mind. And you know what the abortionist said? Spread your legs like a cheerleader, honey, they'll be over in a minute. They don't treat these women compassionately, not at all. And there's other stories where the abortion doctor is doing this abortion in this room, leaves her, goes to the next room, does the next one, and if it's the end of the day, he leaves. If those women have medical complications, they're in the emergency room. That's where they end up. Not the abortionist, he's not helping them. One day I was in a big famous hospital in New Jersey. I was there taking a loved one to the emergency room. In the next cubicle, it was just a curtain separating us, was a Latino woman. And she apparently had gone to an abortion clinic near the hospital that day. And she was hemorrhaging. The physician's assistant came in, and of course I'm literally like, she's here, curtain between us, and I'm here with my family member. And I could hear everything. I wasn't trying to invade on what was going on. I truly believe the Holy Spirit puts me in these places that I hear these things, you know, actually happening. So this physician's assistant comes in and tells her, we're going to have to send you for tests, which they did. When she came back, they said, well, there's parts of the fetus still inside of you. It was an incomplete abortion. And they said, and we're going to have to do further tests because you might have a perforated uterus or a nicked bowel. And we have to have you sign. We're going to put you into surgery right away. You have to sign on this paper because in the event we find more damage than we think right now, we might have to have a total hysterectomy, or if there's a nicked bowel, then we might have to do a colostomy. Imagine that. And here's the telling lie that this doctor said to this woman. But don't worry. You're going to be one of the lucky ones, I feel. No problem. Don't worry. You're going to be one of the lucky ones? So you know what that tells me? They've seen it before. This wasn't new news. And I was like, this is in a famous hospital in New Jersey. I'm talking about big, big hospital. And they must get cases all the time from this abortion clinic up the street that's botching these abortions. And do they do anything about it? Do they report it? Is there anything on the medical form saying that this was related to the abortion? Absolutely not. And so in the book, I've got a lot of these stories that I'm telling you just right now. This is just like the tip of the iceberg, because the purpose of this book literally is to help two camps. You, the pro-lifers, you're in the right direction. But you need good new arguments to discuss the issue with the people you come in contact with. So you see, you don't have to wait to, you know, like you might say, well, where's all the other people here hearing these talks, right? Where are they? How come my friend this one and that one, and they're in the middle on this issue, and why can't I get them to come to the Family Life International Conference? Well, they're not going to come here. But God has placed you here to get this information, and God is calling you when you leave this conference this afternoon to take what you're learning here today and use it all year long with your circle of influence, the people you come in contact with. Because like I showed you on Friday, 65% of those having abortions are believers. They believe in Jesus Christ. They attend either Catholic churches or Christian churches. So your job leaving here is to take information like I'm giving you from my book, Sherry is giving you. We have tons of resources we brought to you from the States. And your job is to take that out there and change hearts and minds. Because think about why people are hanging on to abortion. Because they know it's a baby. Ultrasound, they know it. But people think women need abortion. And people think that it's a good thing for women, that if they're in this circumstances or that circumstance, oh, well, you know, she needs to have an abortion. And so the information I'm giving you in this book is going to help you show that there's never, ever, ever a case when abortion is good for women. I want you to repeat that. It is never, never, never a case where abortion is good for a woman. Okay? We're going to leave here with that. Another big lie about the abortion industry is safe, legal, and rare, right? Now, you know, that's a term Clinton used in the States, but I'm sure it's been exported over here by Planned Parenthood, right? They want to keep decriminalizing abortion. Matter of fact, let's see, today is Sunday here, but it's Saturday back in the States, and the pro-aborts are having a big romp, which I think they did it yesterday here, because they want to decriminalize abortion even more worldwide. So they had a worldwide hootenanny yesterday about this. And so we have to show that even though abortion is legal, it's not safe and it's not rare. Okay? The conditions that these women go to, it's not safe. It's not safe for them because what it's doing to their body, it's stopping their body from doing something it should be doing naturally. And we know it's not rare. It's not rare in New Zealand. It's not rare in the United States. And I went over a lot of stats on Friday, so today's purpose is not to bore you on stats. Another lie we have to get through is people like to talk about the days before abortion was legal, that there were all these back alley abortions and women were still dying from abortions. Well, guess what? Now that it's legal and supposedly safe in the hospitals and clinics, women still die. Women still die from abortion. The picture here just shows an ambulance leaving an abortion clinic in the States, and there's several cases in my book and even more we have online. But here, this is a death certificate I'll hold up. Jennifer Morbelli. This lady had a 36-week abortion. That's how far along she was. And this was a case where her and her husband wanted this baby. They had a baby shower, they had a baby registry, they had named this little girl Madison, and the doctors told them at 36 weeks that Madison was having seizures in utero and most likely would be born with this severe seizure disorder. And she came from New York, my area. And they told her, you should have a termination. They won't use the word abortion, they like to clean it up. They say termination. Of course, we can't do it here in New York State because we have laws saying here after 28 weeks you can't have an abortion. So you'll have to go, and they recommended her to a late-term abortion doctor in Maryland, Dr. Carhart. She drove on a Sunday with her husband and her mother and her dad down to Maryland, checked into a hotel, and later that night went to see Carhart at the mill, the abortion clinic. He started, the steps of the procedure. He gave her medications to begin to dilate her cervix. They went back to the hotel. Each day for the next 3 days, she had to come, get more medication to dilate her cervix. And by Wednesday, she was okay to have the abortion. On ultrasound, he found the baby, found the heart, injected through her abdomen digoxin into that baby's heart to stop it and kill it, and then he delivered a dead baby. He told her to go back to the hotel and that they could drive home the next day. He got on a plane to go to another state where he kills more late-term babies. A few hours later, she had complications. They called the abortion clinic. Of course, nobody was around. Another hour or two later, her mom and her husband took her to the hospital where she was hemorrhaging, and she died at 5:30 that morning. Now, this is a mother who wanted this baby, but the medical profession scared her about something's wrong with your child, and now she lost her life. So this young father lost not just his baby that he acquiesced to having done, but he also lost his wife. And let me just show you a picture. She would look at her obituary. There's her wedding picture. Beautiful, beautiful young girl. Kindergarten teacher. This is just one of many, many cases. I put about 3 in my book, but it's happening all the time. We have people, like I'm sure you have here, 40 Days for Life, people who pray outside the abortion clinics. They report these ambulances coming to take women away. It's not an uncommon thing. It happens quite frequently. And so again, this is what's happening. This is the real reality, the real face of abortion. And again, we have to show people that this is not good for women. Of course, just as a quick side note, I'm sure you all heard about Kermit Gosnell, right? The first time now an abortionist has gone to jail. This is Kadamaya Munger. This is the woman that he killed in his abortion clinic. He actually was convicted of the murder of 3 of the babies that were born alive that he killed by snipping the backs of their heads. And unlike Carhart, he stopped using digoxin because he had such antiquated equipment. I'm sure if you saw the ultrasound machine, it was like from the 80s. So he would have a really hard time trying to find that heart. And so he stopped wasting money on digoxin and would snip their little spinal cords once they were born, these babies. And so he's now serving a life sentence. And on our website at Priest for Life, if you want to get the grand jury report, it describes in great detail what he did in that abortion mill. And actually, the reason he was investigated had nothing to do with abortion. The FBI was going in there because of, there was rumors and they were gathering evidence that he was using drugs illegally there, prescription drugs and so on. And it was when they raided his clinic that they saw the disgusting conditions and the babies in boxes, in freezers, even severed little feet were like trophies lined up in little jars in his office. It was horrific. I was in the courtroom when he was on trial, and I saw the equipment that they seized from his clinic. All right, they seized his equipment in 2009. He was brought to trial this year. But the equipment looked like it was from the 80s or the 90s, and it was rusty and bloodstained and horrible. So that's just one case, but you know, as time goes on, there's another, late-term abortion doctor now in Houston, Texas, that's also being investigated. This is, again, I'm just showing you the stories in the book. This is Tanya Reeves. She was killed at a Planned Parenthood clinic in Chicago, and of course, there's Jennifer Morbelli. So it's not, it's not safe. It might be legal. And you know something about legality? The women who've had abortions will tell you that probably if it wasn't legal, they would never have done it. Legality, and again, I go into this more in my book, legality gives permission, right? I mean, what stops people from speeding down the road over here, right? There's a sign, limit, right? Speed limit. Do some people break the law? Sure, they speed, but then there's consequences, right? So when you think about it, by abortion being legal, yes, some people are going to do it. If it wasn't legal, that would be the game changer right there. We've always had abortion, okay? It's been around since the start of time practically, where people have tried to, terminate pregnancies. But once you legalize abortion, it opens the floodgates by giving the women permission, by making the access so wide and the choice so rare of help that they feel desperate. And so it's legal, it must be okay, so I guess I'm going to do that. In the book too, I also tackle the hard cases, and from rape, incest, life of the mother, and fetal anomaly. But the other thing I cover is children made to order, IVF. And there's a horrible thing that happens with children made to order, is that if it's too successful, the IVF procedure, then what happens is they actually recommend reducing the pregnancy down, okay? So I have a couple of cases in the book, but the one that made me the craziest, because I'm a mother of twins, was the 2-1 pregnancy. This story appeared in the New York Times in the States. And it was a case where this couple they actually went through several IVF procedures. They're $10,000 a procedure. They went through several until finally she conceived twins. And around the 14th week of pregnancy, the doctors gave her the option of reducing the pregnancy. And she said, yes, that's what I want to do. And her husband was begging her not to. And she said, either we reduce this pregnancy to one baby, to a singleton, or I'll terminate the entire pregnancy. I mean, this is crazy. These are people that just spent $30,000 trying to have a baby, and now the wife is willing to reduce it down to one. And in the article, she says that being they created the child in such an artificial manner, in a test tube, then choosing, in their case, they had to choose an egg donor and all these other things. She said, you know what, it was all kind of consumerish anyway. If I had conceived the twins naturally, she said, I would never have considered this. But being it was all artificial, then it's okay with me. And so this is how far we've gotten in society, right? Because we have treated children like commodities. We can have them when we want, we can get rid of them when we don't want them. This is the road that abortion has led us down. And, for me personally, as a mother of twins, I found this like crazy. I wrote a blog about it, I put it in my book. I mean, I just, and there's websites you can go to. Just Google IVF and Google selective reduction. And you're gonna read testimonies of couples who talk about this terminating part of the pregnancy. And you might say, well, how do they decide? Well, if it's a girl and a boy and they wanted a boy, they'll tell the doctor to kill the girl. Sometimes if there's 3 or 4 children, basically they'll let the doctor go, okay, we want the boy, and the other 3, whichever children, basically whichever ones they can get to easiest and destroy. And this is done between the 14th to 16th week of pregnancy. It's shocking. But again, this is the kind of thing what I include in my book to show people this is how far down the road we've gotten. That we've gotten down this road to abortion. We're treating children just like I said when I started about like puppies. You wouldn't abort the puppies, but it's okay to selectively reduce. I mean that dog's gonna have 6. Oh, why don't we knock it down to just 2 months instead of 6? You would never do that. Imagine the outrage. I'm sure your papers, it would be all over the front page paper. They're trying to abort puppies, but children are okay. So. This is this is a picture, of course, little twins, and this was in that article that showed the selective reduction. It's horrifying. So I also point out in the book, too, about men, which I covered a lot on Friday, and Sherry has already touched on, too, that, men very often are not part, either they're part of the abortion decision and they're dismissing it, or they're saying, here's the money, go have the abortion, or they're trying to stop the woman, and they have nothing to say. They have no legal right. And so therefore, abortion is really also damaging the men. And another thing I go into is, in the book, is to show true feminism. In the States, the real feminists were Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They were pro-life. And really, what has happened is feminism has been hijacked, wasn't it? I mean, in the 60s and 70s, reproductive freedom, was considered empowering for women. And the original feminists were against abortion. That wasn't even on their, contraception, abortion, they were against all that. It was later in the 60s and 70s that it got hijacked and feminism took on a whole new meaning. So there's another chapter in my book where I talk about I had an abortion, it was fabulous, like wink wink, and I have a lot of the testimonies. And then, of course, I get into the real hard things. What about the cases of rape? And, I know that's the one thing that everyone says, this is why we have to keep abortion legal, right? Because what about the poor woman who's raped? Again, in the book, I have testimonies of women who were raped and had the abortion, women who were raped, and either made an adoption plan or raised the child. And the women, this is Rebecca Kiesling. Her story is in my book. She was conceived in rape. And she's now a pro-life speaker, speaks all over the United States. And look how beautiful she is. Okay, she's now married, has children herself. And she says, I'm that 1%. That's who she is. There's the face of that 1% conceived in rape. Should she have been aborted for the crimes of her father? And that's what we have to show, that these are people we're talking about destroying. This is a beautiful family. This is Jenny. She was conceived in rape, and her mom, Cindy, had to endure terrible circumstances. When she was a teenager, her home was broken into. She was raped by a neighbor. When she found out she was pregnant, her father wanted her to have the abortion. Her mother had died. Her father was raising her and her siblings. She had to literally flee to another state, to another relative where they let her live. She gave birth to Jenny. Jenny's now married, and this picture shows 3, but she just gave birth to her 4th child. So the other thing too is abortion has a generational effect, and we're not even thinking about that. You know, imagine if Cindy acquiesced. And now in my book, I also go into the women who were raped and had the abortion, and what they said was, and there are studies that prove this out, the abortion they could not get over, but the rape they did. In other words, what we're doing to a woman who's raped by giving her an abortion, she's already been traumatized once by the rape. The abortion is a double trauma. And the testimonies of the women who've gone down that road say, I was able to move on after that rape, but I can't forgive myself that I acquiesced and destroyed the life of that child. So there's impounded grief and guilt that they experience. I'm going to skip this. I just skipped that slide because it was United States stats. So, but I'm against abortion. But what about fetal anomalies? And here again, too, there's better choices. Of course, we all know, and I know you covered this in the conference. Over 90% of Down's children are aborted in the United States, and I believe that's here in New Zealand also. But there's all kinds of other fetal fatalities that are diagnosed now because of all the diagnostic tests we have. For example, anencephaly, trisomy 18. Those babies will probably only live maybe a few minutes, a few days, whatever. And what happens is the medical profession counsels the family to abort the pregnancy. And this is a very risky procedure because these babies are usually past 16 weeks when the problems are found out. Like I have here in the diagram, this is the kind of procedure they do on these late-term abortions. But there's a better solution, and it's a thing called perinatal hospice. And again, I go into that in the book. It was developed by Dr. Byron Calhoun, and it's where they bring the couple along in the pregnancy, and then they deliver the baby, and they have a clergy person there, a priest or a minister. And when that baby is born, they baptize that baby. They name the baby. They get to hold the baby, even if it's just for a few moments. And then they're able to plan a proper funeral and everything for the child. And studies have shown that couples who go through perinatal hospice have no post-traumatic stress, whereas those who cave in and abort have post-traumatic stress. All right, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to just say that, look, there's chapters in my book about life of the mother, and I deal with how it's the greatest hoax perpetrated on women, with more testimonies. And we don't have time to play this, but I would have played what I played the other day, which is some of the testimonies. And at the end of the book, I built the case, and I get to the point where I say, isn't it time to recall abortion? I highly recommend for you to get the book from me. I brought a whole bunch of them here because, Colleen told me that you'd be quite interested. And I really think it's going to help you 2 ways. One, more talking points, but also 2, if you know someone who's sitting in the church with you and they think they're somehow pro-choice or even just in the conflicted middle, this book is for them. That's the audience I wrote the book for. Okay, and before I'm going to let you go, just really quick, over here on the board is some websites. Recallabortion.com is where you can go, and I have a whole petition there. People are signing it to just kind of say we should recall this procedure. SilentNoMore.com is where you can read more of the testimonies. And if you want to get people just right to the page on the testimonies, it's abortiontestimonies.com. For the men, we have another shortcut, fatherhoodforever.com. And then we also have a section, unbornmemorials.com. Now that's a section where anyone who's lost a child to abortion or miscarriage can write a memorial to their child. I highly recommend you go there and read some of them. You need a box of Kleenex to read these memorials. And also, too, there's grandparents and siblings who have put memorials up there for their siblings or grandparents who know they've lost children to abortion. And finally, priestforlife.org is our main website. As you know, I work with Father Pavone. Here in Auckland, there's a flyer here on the front to take Project Rachel. There's going to be a healing mass. And then in another part of New Zealand, there's rachelsvineyard.org.nz. They're going to have a healing retreat November 1st to the 3rd. And finally, to look at more healing resources, you just go to abortionforgiveness.com. And then also, before you leave, on the front bench here, I put what's so bad about abortion, men, myths, and abortion, and information about the campaign. All right, and I've given you yellow cards. If you'd like to get more information about Silent No More, we want to bring it to New Zealand, just put your name and your email address, and we'll get you on the list to get more information. So the book is Recall Abortion. I wrote it to help you and to change hearts and minds. Thank you for your attention, and we're out of time, correct? Okay, thank you very much.